The strongest man I ever met couldn't lift a finger. 1964, Hong Kong. A 300-pound master challenged me in my own school. His muscles were like steel cables, earned through 20 years of intense training. The crowd gathered, expecting a show of force against force. They wanted to see who was stronger. But strength is like a finger pointing at the moon. Most people stare at the finger, missing all that heavenly glory. That day, this master threw his fastest punch, a punch that had broken through concrete. I didn't block it. I didn't counter it. I simply wasn't there. His power, all that magnificent strength, hit nothing but air. In that moment, he understood what I'm about to share with you. True power isn't in the ability to break things. It's in the ability to bend without breaking. 20 years of building strength, and he was defeated by its absence. This isn't philosophy. This is reality. My reality. Your reality. I spent years pursuing strength until I discovered something far more valuable. The ability to be like water. Water can flow, or it can crash. Be formless, shapeless, limitless. The moment you try to be strong, you've already lost. Let me show you exactly what I mean. What happened next in that school changed how I would approach martial arts and life forever. You've probably seen the footage, me standing just 1 inch away from a man, then sending him flying backwards with what appears to be just a tiny movement. The 1-inch punch. People called it superhuman strength. They were wrong. When I performed this demonstration at the Long Beach International Karate Championships, everyone wanted to know the secret. How could someone my size generate such explosive power? They thought I had discovered some hidden technique, some way to pack impossible strength into a single moment. But here's what they missed. The less strength I used, the more powerful the punch became. Think about that for a moment. Less strength, more power. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But this is exactly where most martial artists, most people, fall into the trap. They try to muscle their way through life, forcing their will against the universe. They build walls of strength, only to be defeated by their own rigidity. Let me share something I've never told anyone about that demonstration. The first 100 times I practiced the 1-inch punch, I failed. Why? Because I was trying to be strong. I was doing what everyone does, tensing my muscles, trying to force power into that single inch of space. And it was useless. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to be strong. Instead of tensing, I learned to relax completely. Instead of forcing power outward, I learned to let power flow through me. Like electricity through a wire, the less resistance, the more current flows. I discovered this truth again when a bodybuilder challenged me in my school. This man had biceps the size of my thighs. He grabbed my arm, thinking his strength would give him control. But the moment he squeezed, he had already lost. Why? Because he was trapped in the prison of his own strength. While he was busy being strong, I was busy being free. This is what I mean by intelligent strength. It's not about how much force you can generate. It's about how little force you need to use. The less effort, the faster and more powerful you will be. This isn't just a technique. It's a complete reversal of everything you've been taught about power. But here's the paradox that few are ready to face. To achieve this kind of power, you must first be willing to be completely powerless. You must empty your cup before it can be filled. And this brings me to the most important question. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? Do you know who my most difficult students were? Not the beginners. Not the ones who came to me with no experience. My most challenging students were the ones who arrived already strong, the champions, the experts, the masters of other styles. I remember one student in particular, a heavyweight boxing champion, muscles like iron, fists that could shatter bones. He came to me believing he needed to add more power to his arsenal. But his real problem? He was drowning in his own strength. During our first session, I asked him to push against my arm. He pushed with everything he had, veins bulging, face red with effort. Then I simply redirected his force, and he fell forward, nearly breaking his nose on the floor. Not because I was stronger, but because his own force betrayed him. This is what I call broken force, power that defeats itself. Let me tell you about my greatest defeat. Few know this story, but it shaped everything I understand about true strength. In my younger days in Hong Kong, I fought with a master who never seemed to move, yet I couldn't touch him. I attacked with all my speed, all my power, all my skill, and I was completely defeated. Not by his strength, by my own. Every punch I threw, every kick I launched was fueled by my desperate need to prove myself strong. Each movement was rigid with intention, brittle with effort. While I exhausted myself trying to be strong, he remained relaxed, letting my own force flow through him and back into me. That day, I tasted the bitter truth. The moment you try to be strong, you've already lost. This is the secret that most will never understand. True weakness doesn't come from a lack of strength. It comes from an excess of it. When you grip sand too tightly, it slips through your fingers. When you clutch at water too desperately, it disperses. When you try to be strong, you become brittle. I see this every day. Powerful men and women, armored in their strength, yet completely vulnerable to the slightest unexpected touch. They've built fortresses of muscle and technique, but forget that the tallest towers cast the longest shadows. But there's something beyond this paradox, something that transforms this apparent weakness into unimaginable power. And it begins with a question that most are afraid to ask. What if everything you're doing to become stronger is actually making you weaker? What you call strength is often nothing but fear wearing armor. I learned this truth not in combat, but in quiet moments observing my students when they thought I wasn't watching. Their faces before a fight, their tension before a demonstration, all masks hiding the same thing: fear. I remember one student, a police officer, who came to me after failing to defend himself in a real confrontation. He had all the training, all the techniques, all the physical power. But in that crucial moment, his strength abandoned him. Why? Because he was fighting two battles, one with his attacker and another with his own fear. Fear does something strange to us. It makes us grip tighter, stand more rigidly, try to control everything around us. We call this strength, but it's actually panic disguised as power. This is what I call empty strength, the illusion of power that collapses the moment it's truly tested. Let me share something I observed in my Oakland school. I would sometimes ask my advanced students to spar with beginners. The advanced students would often become stiff, mechanical, trying to prove their superiority. Their years of training would dissolve into rigid movements and forced techniques. Their ego's addiction to appearing powerful made them weak. But occasionally, I'd see something remarkable. A student would reach a point of complete exhaustion, too tired to maintain their facade of strength. And in that moment, when they were too fatigued to try to be strong, their movements would become pure, effortless, powerful. They had accidentally discovered the secret. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. This is the crucial understanding. Your ego's desperate grip on power is your greatest weakness. Every time you try to prove your strength, you reveal your fear. Every time you armor yourself against weakness, you prevent true power from flowing through you. I've seen martial artists spend decades building walls of technique and power, only to be defeated by a simple, relaxed movement. Not because their opponent was stronger, but because they were imprisoned by their own need to be strong. There's a profound transformation waiting on the other side of this understanding. But to reach it, you must first ask yourself, what are you afraid would happen if you stopped trying to be strong? My greatest breakthrough came at my darkest moment. I had injured my back severely during training, confined to bed for 6 months. The doctors said I might never kick again. In that moment of complete powerlessness, I discovered true power. Unable to train physically, I was forced to look deeper. And there, in that enforced stillness, I understood 3 principles that would revolutionize not just my martial arts, but my entire approach to power. First, true power is not the ability to conquer others, but to conquer oneself. During those months of recovery, I learned that my body's limitations were actually doorways to deeper understanding. When I couldn't kick physically, I kicked mentally, thousands of times. When I returned to training, my kicks were faster, more powerful. Not because I was stronger, but because I had transcended the need for strength. Second, power flows in the space between effort and non-effort. Think of how you catch a ball. The moment you try to catch it, you become stiff, likely to miss. But when you simply allow your hand to meet the ball's path, catching becomes effortless. This is true power, not forcing, but flowing. Third, fear is not your enemy, it's your compass. Every time you feel fear, it's pointing to where you need to flow, not force. When I returned to training after my injury, I was afraid. But instead of fighting that fear, I let it guide me to a new way of moving, a new understanding of power. These aren't just martial arts principles. Think about your daily challenges. When facing a difficult conversation, most people tense up, try to control the outcome. But what if you approached it like water? No fixed position to defend, no rigid strength to maintain, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. The same applies to your work, your relationships, your greatest challenges. The moment you stop trying to be powerful is the moment you access true power. It's like trying to see in the dark. The harder you strain your eyes, the less you see. Relax your gaze, and your vision naturally adapts. This is the liberation I discovered. True power isn't something you do. It's something you allow. Like water flowing downhill, it follows the path of least resistance. Not because it's weak, but because it has transcended the need to prove its strength. And now you understand why I say strength is an illusion. Because what we're really seeking isn't strength at all. It's freedom. Let me share one final story. The day before my last public demonstration, a young student asked me a question that many thought foolish. He said, "Master Lee, when will I be strong enough?" Everyone laughed, but in that simple question, I heard the echo of my own journey. I told him then what I tell you now. You are already strong enough. Your quest for strength is what weakens you. Your desire to be powerful is what limits your power. Your fear of weakness is what blocks your true potential. Think back to everything we've explored. The trap of physical strength that imprisons us. The vulnerability that comes from trying too hard to be strong. The psychology of power that keeps us frozen. And finally, the liberation that comes when we stop trying to be what we already are. I've spent my life breaking through barriers, pushing beyond limits. But my greatest achievement wasn't in becoming strong. It was in discovering that strength itself was the final barrier I needed to break through. This is your moment of transformation. Right now, as you listen to these words, you have a choice. You can continue armoring yourself with the illusion of strength, adding layers of resistance to your natural power, or you can begin the journey of unlearning, of letting go, of allowing your true power to flow. Remember, water doesn't try to overcome the rock. It simply finds its way through. It doesn't fight gravity. It aligns with it. It doesn't try to be powerful. It simply expresses its nature. Your power lies not in what you can hold on to, but in what you can let go of. Not in what you can control, but in what you can allow. Not in how strong you can become, but in how deeply you can understand that strength itself is the final illusion you need to transcend. This is my gift to you. Not an answer, but an invitation. An invitation to stop being strong so you can become powerful. To empty your cup of what you think you know about strength, so it can be filled with something far greater. Be water, my friend. The rest will follow.